Welcome, everybody, to the Weekly Grind Podcast. I am your host, Keith Fabbri, with my co-host, Doctortoddlee. Todd, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing, Keith?
I'm good, man. Todd, you're back this week because last week we missed you. You forgot about the show. So
I was like really engrossed in something at the moment and totally lost track of time.
That's fine.
My bad.
And with us tonight we have the 2016 NPC Teen National Champion, Mr. Teen USA, Dominic Triveline. Dominic, welcome to the Weekly Grind Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And Dom, you've had a pretty quick career in bodybuilding. You won the Michigan State at age 17, and have pretty much won every show that you had entered up until your last one when you went to the Junior Nationals, and all you did was place in the top 5 at age 20. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your contest history, in case people that are listening don't know who you are, and we'll go from there.
I'm Dominic Triveline. I'm located out here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. My first show, like he said, I did the Teen Miss Michigan. I won my class there, and in men's novice. The following year, at 18 years old, I went on to Teen Nationals, where I actually placed second in a very close battle with Davey. Following year, I came back to win the overall at 19 years old as a middleweight. And then my last show I did was Junior Nationals, where I placed fourth. First time as a light heavyweight, so it was quite a big jump.
Right.
With class in competition, especially.
Yeah, and you're going against basically at at age 20, you're going against grown men. Some of those guys in their late 20s, early 30s. And you're 20 years old. But placing the top 5 is pretty good.
Right. I was kind of bummed at first. It's hard going from winning the overall at a national show to not winning. I mean, I expect to win every time, I get on stage. So it was kind of rough to not win that show, but it's definitely motivated me for this upcoming year.
Yeah. So take me back to Teen Nationals and winning the overall, the middleweight, and the overall in 2016. And you went in, you came back from taking second the year before. You said you won the overall there. It's your third show. Take me back to where you went from that point, because at that point now you're really on the map. You're Teen USA. There's only a handful of guys that can say they are Teen USA. So tell me where you went from there to where you are now. How'd you get from the Teen Nationals to deciding to do the Junior Nationals, and ultimately this year deciding you're going to do the USAs, from my understanding?
Well, right after Teen Nationals, I took a couple weeks off post-show, and I teamed up with nutritionist Justin Harris.
Okay.
Which is the best decision I've ever made in bodybuilding.
I agree.
I started working with him. We adjusted nutrition-wise compared to what I was used to, and I instantly kind of blew up and started putting on a size. And after speaking with him, our best choice was definitely to do junior, still be 20 years old. I didn't quite think I was ready to get on stage on a pro fighting levels.
Right.
I just kind of wanted to get feet wet first. Like I said, Justin. Actually, in the 11 months I worked with him, I put on 21 pounds of stage weight, and that's a short amount of time with him.
Good.
Chief?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
We got you back.
So, like I said, I worked with Justin Harris the past offseason heading into Junior Nationals. Put on about 21 pounds of stage weight in a 6-month offseason.
Right.
And a 4-month prep with him. And then this previous year, I think I've added on even more size. We'll be doing Junior Nationals first again in June. The plan is to come in peak condition for that show and then try to hold it for USA's 6 weeks later and compete at the light heavy.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, I just seen pictures of you. You're like, what, 230 pounds right now, off season?
Yeah, I fluctuate between, I wake up at about 231. I get up as high as 240. It just kind of depends on food intake at that point, with Justin
Right.
having me do carb cycling.
Right.
On a high carb day, my weight pushes up pretty high.
Sure.
Because I eat a ton of food.
Well, you hold a bunch of water, too.
Just read my diet, so it's a ton of food. My weight fluctuates a lot, but I usually sit in the low 230s.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about that. You said you teamed up with Justin. What was the decision to make to team up with Justin Harris after the Teen Nationals?
And complete honesty, I needed a coach that could take me to the next level. And after working with the same coach for 2 years and pretty much not making any progress at all, I knew I needed to change something.
Okay.
And I knew it wasn't something that I was doing because I was putting in the work,
Sure.
training and eating. There just wasn't something going right there. So with Justin being local, it made the most sense to me to work with him over other national level coaches I thought about working with.
Okay.
And it's turned out to be, like I said, a great decision to work with Justin.
Sure. What is different about Justin and your previous coach? What's different as far as what he has you doing?
The biggest thing is the diet, the amount of food I eat,
Okay.
and especially the amount of clean eating.
Sure.
That's the biggest thing. I don't eat like shit in the off season anymore.
Okay.
I mean, chicken and rice. I eat the same stuff I do in prep in the off season. Just the portions change.
Okay.
I do a much higher carbohydrate diet and extremely low fat. So that was the biggest thing, was being able to eat more carbs. Helped me put on a lot more size, I think.
Sure. And you did carb backloading before, correct?
Yeah, I did carb backloading, and I could see how it works when you're dieting, but trying to put on size in the off season,
Yeah. You're putting on
it
fat.
didn't make a lot of sense to me.
You're putting on fat.
Exactly.
Because it becomes an excuse to just eat garbage all the time. Well, I'm backloading carbohydrates. Well, no, you're just eating a bunch of fucking shit, and that's essentially the only way to gain any weight when you do it. Unfortunately, is to do that even with your fat intake being very, very high throughout the day. The only way to actually get those carbohydrates. I mean, the theory is that to not burn carbohydrates throughout the day, keep the carb stores and the glycogen stores up throughout the day, and then you're burning body fat throughout the day, and then you go ahead and eat carbohydrates after you train when your IGF-1 is released and your body needs the insulin spike. But the problem is that
Right.
people destroy that because they eat carbs with fat.
Exactly.
And you end up destroying that insulin spike and just slowing down the glycemic index to the point where it just ends up fucking, you end up putting fat back in your body essentially. So you're going to burn the glucose that you just you just took in, but your body's going to put fat in as storage because it can't do both. It's going to do one or the other.
Right.
So,
and I read John Kiefer's book on carb backloading.
Yep.
There was the specific part I'll always remember reading, basically stating, after you work out, there was always this 2-hour window where you could literally eat, whatever you wanted.
Yeah,
and
that's not true.
Wouldn't convert to fat at all, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, eating 6 donuts after you work out is,
it's not.
I mean, not only is it unhealthy, it's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
In my as well.
Yeah, I backload my carbohydrates because I train first thing in the morning, so a lot of my carbohydrates are backloaded anyway, and then I kind of slow the carbohydrate intake down as the day goes because I don't really need them anymore, and I'll start adding in some fats, but it's all clean.
Exactly.
It's all clean. I'm just eating a lot more. I mean, I'm still going to get in like today. I mean, I'm dieting for Masters Nationals, and today was a medium carb day, so I had about 275 grams of carbs today. And most of them were in the first 3 meals that I ate, 4 meals that I ate throughout the day, plus my intra. And then the last 3 meals were basically protein and fat.
And that was another thing I noticed working with Justin was we really took advantage of the pre, intra, and post-workout nutrition.
Yes, he's big on that.
Honestly, something I didn't even really know about beforehand.
Right.
But after, kind of talking to Justin about it and he explained it to me, I think that's one thing that made a huge difference in me putting on size was taking advantage of the pre, intra, and post-workout nutrition. Timing my nutrients differently, carbohydrate intake, and even during my workout too.
Yep. Yeah, he's I do a lot of the same things that Justin does. I kind of learned it from Justin. So for me, I mean, it's I'm very familiar with it. I was just kind of wondering your take on what was different between the two. Now, is there anything different training wise between the two?
Definitely. I do my own training, which is how I prefer it to be.
Right.
Previously, my coach did the training for me, which I did not like. It's hard to follow a workout. I've always been a fan of training instinctively.
Sure.
So when you have a workout program in front of you and you don't feel like doing certain things, it just kind of makes for a shitty workout.
Right. Well, especially if it's a move that you don't necessarily doesn't correspond with your body, because not every movement is going to correspond with your structure.
Right. Exactly.
And rep ranges for everybody aren't necessarily always the same. Now, I do a lot of my clients' training for them in the off season, but I'm open to, if they tell me that something's not working, we'll change it right away. I mean, I'm not going to tell them that they're stupid because it's their body. They're the ones that are feeling it, whether or not they're actually feeling the muscle, work or not.
The biggest thing off-season training was I'm very big at sticking to basic movements, squats, deadlifts, lateral presses, and training at very low rep range, right around the 6th range.
Yeah.
I think that contributed a lot to my thickness and my size.
Sure.
I was never about training for like the pump or just going in there and getting some blood flow and like getting a pump. That did nothing for me. High volume training does nothing.
Right. It's got a time and place for certain times, and during the off season and stuff with a high volume training. But I mean, for me too. I mean, the best bet, especially for you being young, injury free for the most part, and able to recover a lot faster, you might as well go ahead and train as heavy and as hard as you possibly can while you can. Because when you get old like me, you can't do that anymore. then you're basically just maintaining the muscle and just trying to maintain density on that you've built over years. But it becomes easier when you're older to maintain that density because you've already built it.
Right. I've always took a very low volume approach to training. Sure. I probably do 8 to 10 work sets per body.
Yep.
Extremely heavy. Kind of like a Dorian Yates style.
Sure.
I always believed in, Dorian said, you can only get so much intensity into one set. Right. So I've always kind of that. I'd always work up to one set, and I gave that set, everything I could. Training. Right.
Yeah, Dorian was notorious for that. 1 or 2 working sets to failure, and I mean, look at his physique. It speaks for itself. I think a lot of your really good pros, even if they did do higher volume training, were only the ones that did really, really well and had the best results were the ones that were only able to do 1 or 2 sets to failure for that exercise. I mean, if you look at like a Kevin Levrone, I mean, he had a lot more volume, but really the last set was the one that he absolutely just, killed himself on, because everything else was kind of a prelude to it and kind of built him up to handle that load on that last set.
Right. Like when you'd watch videos of him bench pressing, he's warming up with 405 for 2, 455 for 2. Yep. And then he hits 500 for 6.
Yeah. That was his set.
Exactly
that was it. That was his set right there. He was just basically amping the muscle up for what he was about to do to it. Yeah.
And I always, when I watch Project Super Heavyweight with Justin and Steve, that's kind of the same approach they took with the DC training. Yep. They just warm up with, 4 reps, 2 reps, and then they hit that one set, and it was balls to the wall, as hard as they could. Yep. And I just like taking that same approach.
Yeah. So you end up with Justin. You are using carb cycle in the off season and eating a ton of clean food. You've put on 20 pounds of stage weight into the junior nationals. Talk to me about that prep for the junior nationals. As far as was it what you expected, or was there anything that was different than from what you expected? I know me and you talking and stuff. You were, there for a few weeks. We're struggling even to get down to light heavyweight. You had to go ahead and do a few things to get down there those last 4 weeks. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, that was a struggle we had. And we ended up, I think it ended up kind of hurting us in the end. And
sure.
Justin talks about that in one of the videos I filmed with Saigo. But when I was about 3.5 weeks out, I was still 215 pounds.
Yeah.
And my glutes were striated. And we had no idea how I was going to get down to light heavy. So we did 6 days in a row of just protein and veggies.
Yeah.
I would do one high day at the end of the week.
Sure.
Did that to have my weight down, but I got myself so depleted that we couldn't bring myself back in time.
Right.
And the last few days before stage, Justin's having me but I think we just got too depleted at that point to bring myself back to look better on stage. Because I looked great a week out, but I just think the timing of things and how depleted I got kind of hurt us in the end.
Go back to that. What did he, like, we lost you there for a second. What did he have you do that last week?
Oh, we were taking my blood sugar every
right. Okay.
The last days, and it was extremely high for some reason. Like, I think a lot of it was nerves.
That could be.
But it was forcing water to go under my skin and not in the muscles.
Yep.
And I was getting flat, or not flat. I was getting smooth looking, but I was full at the same time.
Right.
I actually weighed in at junior nationals at 193, and within 12 hours, I was 210 pounds.
And I can believe that because you were depleted so much. Pretty much what it sounds like is that with the depletion and stuff, you just didn't have enough days to fill up because you're trying to make weight. So if you would have had like 4 days between your weigh-in, or didn't have to worry about, making weight necessarily, you could have taken 4 days. You probably would have been fine, but you had, having to cram enough carbohydrates in there, your body started pulling in water, and it just wasn't going to work in that short of a time span. I've had that happen before without using a glucometer and trying to fit in a carb load overnight, basically, and it did a lot of the same thing. I was full, but I looked smooth.
Right, I was having the same issue. We even did I think it was Thursday after I weighed in. I ate 1,200 grams of carbs that day.
Yeah.
And I was still flat, but I was smooth at the same time.
Right.
And I just started freaking out because it looked like shit. So we ended up being a halfway decent physique for what I looked like a day out.
Right. Yeah, and now, you're thinking light heavyweight again for the junior nationals, or are you thinking heavyweight this time? We're
definitely going to do light heavies. Not that I can't be a heavyweight, but I want to be where I'm going to place the highest. Okay. There's no doubt I'll be the most competitive in the light heavy class.
Right.
Rather than at the bottom end of the heavies.
Sure.
The ultimate goal is to win. So wherever I'm going to have the best chance of winning at is where I'm going to go. We're going to have a different approach in how we get my weight down. I think last year we waited too long till the end to bring my weight down, and after talking to Justin last week, we're going to bring my weight down a little bit sooner.
Okay.
Right around the mark.
Right.
I have to deplete really hard and keep carbs in the whole time.
Sure. Well, and it makes sense that you're just, you're letting your body tighten up and get used to what you're doing, and then you won't have to carb load quite as hard as what you did. You can slowly add carbs. If your weight's already down in the 190s, a few weeks out, you're good to go. Once you drop the water out, you'll have that wiggle room in there, as opposed to being 215, a few weeks out and being like, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah, because me and Justin are constantly going back and forth between, should we do heavy, should we do light heavy? Because we, for the life of us, could not get my weight to drop.
I don't know if you would have done any worse as a heavyweight? I've seen the pictures of you,
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking
weeks
if
out.
you look better, I'm thinking if you look better at 215 than you did at 193, you might have done just as well as a heavyweight. So this time, now that you're like 231 and shredded, maybe 225, 220 might be a wise choice rather than trying to force a 198.
Yeah, definitely playing it by ear because we're not sure. I mean, definitely a lot leaner. I woke up this morning and my quads are all vascular like they are 4 weeks out. I mean, that's 200.
Right. Yeah, I think when you get in that situation, it's just basically, I mean, you have to go with your gut instinct and what you think is your best bet. I mean, your height puts you at a disadvantage, and that's where the same problem that I run into, it being 5'5", my height becomes a disadvantage at heavyweight at the national level. I mean, at local level, state level, you can get away with that because, it's more of a conditioning show anyway. But when you get to the national level, when you're standing next to guys that are 5'9", and they're 10 pounds heavier than you, they're going to look a lot bigger and wider than you are. They're just going to look structurally better than somebody who's 5'6" like you are at the same weight. Whereas if you come down to the light heavyweight, you're the biggest one in the light heavyweight class. Now they're trying to play catch up with you.
Plays an advantage as a light heavy. I mean, I'm only 5'5", but as a heavy and not being at the top of the weight class, it does put me at a disadvantage standing next to a guy that's 5'8", 5'9".
Right. Yeah, and it's I say the same thing that I have, same issue that I have with being a heavyweight. I mean, I'm sure I can come in, but am I going to be 204, 205?
Right.
Standing next to somebody that's 220. And, not that weight necessarily matters, but when they're 5'9" and that weight, their waist looks smaller, everything looks bigger on them because it's a little bit more spread out. They're structurally, they look a little bit better than somebody who's a smushed down 204. Whereas if I just bring the weight down a little bit, now I look that much bigger standing next to somebody the same height as me in the weight class below, and you have the same issue. So.
And I've always kind of compared myself to Jordan in that aspect. Jordan Janowitz.
Right.
Him and I were back lifting at the gathering, and Josiah's gathering in December, and we both weighed about 240 pounds at that point.
Right.
But with Jordan being taller, he still looks bigger in certain aspects.
Right.
So it's definitely the illusion part of it.
Yep.
Puts me at a disadvantage in the heavyweight class.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he's like 5'7". It's just that couple of inches makes a huge difference standing next to each other. Clavicles are wider. I mean everything is more spread out, which can make the waist look smaller, add to the illusion. The weight can be exactly the same or even less, and it's just going to make it look that much better standing there, which until you reach a kind of a threshold with height where you're, you get up over 6 foot, then it's like, okay, well, now you start looking stringy if you're not, 290 pounds, but.
And one thing me and Justin talked about with how much size I already carry for my age, Justin doesn't see, a ceiling and size limit as far as how big I can get. I definitely think I have the frame to hold more than just like a 212 class physique if I wanted to.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't have narrow clavicles, so that's the biggest thing. You have wide clavicles, which means you can pack a lot more muscle and density into your back, especially your upper back. Which and then you've already got big shoulders, but you can make them that much bigger, and it's all it's gonna do is add to the illusion of the X frame. So they make it so you can actually make your legs bigger, which up until last year, your quads kind of overpowered the rest of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely. I think light heavyweight probably still for another year is probably your best bet as well. I think another year of that before you move up to the heavyweight class. There's no rush for you. That's the thing. You're 21 years old. I mean, I don't even remember being 21 years old. You've got plenty of time.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we won't have to come back next year if I do well enough for USA's, but
sure.
We'll see. should be an interesting year. But definitely, if I do have to come back next year, it will be as a heavyweight.
Right. So, what is different this offseason? Because you even said you're leaner, you're bigger. Your weight is actually less this year than what it was a year ago. Because remember, a year ago at this time, you were 240 plus in the offseason with your first time working with Justin. Right now, you're 230 to up to 240 on a high day. What's is there anything different that you're doing this year that you guys are doing? Are you purposely keeping the weight down and staying a little leaner this off season, or no?
I think my metabolism is just faster.
Okay.
Because I'm eating more food than I was, and my body just can't keep up.
Right.
Last Saturday, I posted those pictures of me at 231, and the night before that, after I ate all 6 meals clean, like Justin has me do, I ate a half dozen Krispy Kremes and a whole box of cereal, and I woke up a half pound lighter.
Yeah.
So, and I just my body just burns right through everything.
Your metabolism.
I mean, Justin will tell you, I probably have one of the fastest metabolisms he's ever worked with. I definitely get away with a lot, but I mean, I eat clean all 6 meals that he gives me. And if I want extra food, I will. But it takes a lot of food. Like my high carb days today, and I'll do 900 grams of carbs pretty easily, just from clean food like rice and oatmeal.
Right. So you cut your protein back on that days, like he does everybody else? Yeah.
We'll drop from 55 grams of protein per meal to 35.
Okay. Yeah. So.
And then my carbs just skyrocket. Like I usually do anywhere from 150 carbs per meal to 200.
That's 2 meals for most people. It's 3 meals for a lot of people.
So my post-workout meal after legs today was I had 3 cups of rice and I had some cereal with it too. But 200 grams of carbs of food is a lot, but my body needs that. I mean, I'm always hungry. Trying to burn through everything.
Did it take you a fucking hour to eat?
It actually took me about 20 minutes to eat all that. I was pretty hungry after training legs.
That's true. I'm usually not hungry after training legs right away. Just central nervous system that doesn't allow me to have an appetite for like probably about an hour and a half. So I literally have to force feed myself after legs to eat. I can't imagine eating that much afterwards.
Well, one thing I actually found out interesting about me and nutrition this year is my gallbladder functions kind of differently. I have a very hard time eating fats.
Okay.
So the higher carbohydrate approach works very well for me because fats kind of make me extremely bloated.
Yep.
It causes my gallbladder to contract and push against my digestive system.
Yep.
And will actually cause me to vomit or have just suppress my appetite in general. So that's another thing where the clean eatings come into play that's helped a lot. But me and Justin pretty much always follow a very low fat intake.
Right. All right. So when are you actually starting your prep for the Junior Nationals and USAs?
I start prep for Junior Nationals February 26th, that Monday.
Okay.
I'll be 16 weeks out. I mean, technically I'm starting prep, but I eat so much food going up until the show. I don't feel like I'm dieting for like the last 4 weeks.
Right. Yeah. How many calories on your medium training days does he have you eating right now?
On my medium day, I do 350 protein, 650 carbs, and then 35 grams of fat. So, gosh, I don't know how much that adds up to.
That's
but,
600 grams of carbs on a medium day.
Yeah,
What's your low day? 500?
450.
Okay. Yeah, your metabolism is ridiculous. A low day for me, and even in the off season, is like 150 carbs, just because.
Well, my low day was at 300, and I emailed him. I'm like, dude, I can't stick to this. I'm so hungry. So he upped it, man. He put more carbs in there,
and your metabolism speeds up even more. So
yeah, a lot of it. I've always been a big eater as a kid. It doesn't mean that I like eating this much because I don't, but I've always been able to eat a ton of food.
Right. Well, and that's, hey, if you can do it, do it. You're going to get better size gains out of it. You got to, the old adage is eat big to get big, and there is some truth to that. Obviously, you want to eat clean big, but you have to be able to eat a lot of good quality calories in order to grow. I mean,
Right.
if you're never eating a surplus, then you're never going to grow.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, when they take the, dirty approach and eating a lot of crap in the off season, they're just trying to gain weight. I mean, you're not gaining lean
muscle
tissue.
Right.
You're gaining a lot of fat and water. I mean, it's the consistency of eating the clean food day in, day out, year after year, holidays, birthdays, whatever it may be. And that's going to add up to lean tissue growth over time. Not just trying to jam all, half a dozen donuts down after you work out.
Right. Yeah, and that approach, for me and for, a lot of your top guys, how many top pros do you see that are eating nothing but garbage in the off season and just, giving it a free? No, they still stick to a structured diet. They stick to a plan. They may have, more liberal cheat meals and stuff in there because they can, because, at 280, 290 pounds in your off season with that much muscle tissue, you can get away with eating, more junk a little more often just because of the fact that you have that much muscle tissue, which means your metabolism moves that much faster, more efficiently than somebody else that doesn't have that much muscle. But that doesn't give you free reign to go out and just eat, a box of Krispy Kremes after you train every single day.
Well, if you watch Jay Cutler and all of his training videos eating the off season, he ate the same shit he did in contest time. He just ate more of it. Right. And the same with most of the top pros. There's a handful of guys, Juan Morel eats that crap in the off season, but that's just one guy out of all of them.
Right. He's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. 99% of those guys are eating the same stuff they do in prep. They just eat more of it. Right. And that's the same approach I follow too.
Yep. They eat the same thing. They eat more of it, and they don't do as much, if any, cardio, and that's the difference. That really is the difference.
I definitely think one of the reasons why I stayed a lot leaner this year was just the amount of muscle mass I carry. Justin always told me, he's like, as you get bigger, it becomes harder to get fat, just because when you have so much, muscle mass, your metabolism is constantly going. You're burning through food. Right. So that's definitely one reason I stayed leaner. Right. Looking at comparison pictures, I started prep last year at 231, and being 231 right now, I look like a completely different person.
Yeah, the pictures you posted last week, when I looked at that, I was like, "There's no way that he's only 231 pounds." You standing there, you look like you're in the 240s, but you look like you're probably 6 weeks out of the show. Yeah. So, that was first thing in the morning, right?
Yeah, that was right when I woke up.
Yeah, so you're dry at that point. So that's usually when I like to gauge myself, is first thing in the morning when I wake up, get up, pee, weigh myself, gauge what I kind of look like. Not so much in the off season because I really don't. It's not as important, but during a contest prep, obviously, looking at yourself constantly.
I do it at the same time every single week that I can. And during the off season, I probably check in with Justin every 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. Not anything too frequently because there's not a whole lot of adjusting to do in the off season. No. It's a grind, the day in, day out, eating the same shit every freaking day. Yeah. And doing it over and over again. And so there's not a whole lot that changes in the off season.
No, I have my clients check in bi-weekly in the off season with me. That's just basically to hold them accountable. I may make changes, I may not, but I might. There's clients that I'll go 2 months without I'll make any changes because it's not necessary, and then they have ones that, you make changes probably once a month for them, where you just slightly change this or change that. And basically, it's just accountability. Hey, look, have you been doing what you've been doing? Yep, Exactly. But yeah. All right, we're going to take a commercial break here, and we're going to come back with Dominic Triveline.
Have you ever wished there was a site devoted to providing true information about bodybuilding? one that shows you what the top bodybuilders are really doing? It's all here at musclementor.net. Nutrition, training, supplements, super supplements, contest prep, final week prep, and everything in between. Training logs, diet logs, scientific articles, and hours of video footage covering every detail involved with building muscle and losing body fat. Brought to you by prep gurus Justin Harris and Brad Hall, all for only $9.99 a month. That's right, musclementor.net. Let's get freaky. Valhalla Labs at valhalla-labs.com. Created by Doctortoddlee himself, champion bodybuilder and biochemist, the best in testosterone support and intra and post-workout nutrition.
And we are back with Dominic Triveline, NPC national level bodybuilder, who competed at the Junior Nationals a year ago and took fourth in the light heavyweight class, and he's getting ready for Junior Nationals again this year as a light heavyweight and the USA's in July after that. Dominic, during the commercial there, you told me that you are blogging for musclementor.net, or you're going to start a blog for them. I'm blogging for them currently myself for my prep for Masters Nationals. Talk to me a little bit about that, what the blog is going to actually, entail, what some of the content you're going to have in there, and when's that start?
I'm going to start blogging everything at the beginning of my prep, 16 weeks out at the end of February. I plan on mostly focusing on my nutrition, number one, talking about, and my diet as well, and basically how I feel going into the prep, where I'm at mentally, but mostly the diet and training. My training does differ a little bit going into the show than what I do in the off season. In the off season, like I said, I stick to the basics, heavier, low reps. During pre-contest, I usually play it a little bit safer as far as what I'm doing exercise-wise, but
right,
they'll all be covered in the blogs on Justin's website, musclementor.com.
Are you going to you're going to actually put your actual workouts in there like I do?
Yes, I
Okay.
will.
Cool. Good. That's good information there. Good stuff. And people can see what you're doing and kind of gets a little insight into that. Let's shift gears here a little bit. Speaking of gear, let's go on. Is there anything different that you're doing gear wise with Justin that you from what you were doing with your previous coach? And what are those differences?
The biggest thing with Justin is we keep things as simple as possible, including gear. In the off season, it's very simple. It's usually 2 compounds, and we'll utilize insulin on higher carbohydrate days.
Okay.
If growth hormone is being used at the time.
Sure.
I believe, and I think Justin believes this too, I think insulin without growth hormone is useless. I just think the synergistic effect of both of them, they need to be used together.
Right.
And to use one without the other, it doesn't make sense to me. But that's pretty much like, testosterone always being the base of every cycle, and then a small other amount of compound with it. That's pretty much it for off season.
Right.
Now, previously with my other coach, there was no structure at all. It was like I'd ask him what I should take, and he's like, well, I'll take this, and then 10 weeks later you should switch it and start taking this, and there was no reasoning behind it, no structure. So I was almost clueless in what I was doing, and that sounds bad on my part because I should know.
Right.
But
I had the same coach. To your defense, if you asked that coach a question, he just lied. And he was such a smooth, talking, convincing liar, you believed it. Here I am, I have a degree in this shit, and he's smooth enough and manipulative enough to where he gets you to question yourself and trust him, and you just do what he says, even though it doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, I totally agree with that, Todd.
Right.
And you almost feel bad about asking because, the answers he give you, you're like, oh, why would I even ask?
Right.
There was no structure to it or no reason why, or it just didn't make sense to me. Versus how Justin lays it out is it's like an actual protocol. There's reasons why we do things, at certain times. And it's all based around my nutrition and training too.
Sure.
Versus just throwing a bunch of shit at you and telling you
The way it should be.
Right.
Your nutrition and your training should be number one, and it should be 1A, 1B, and then, the gear should be, the finishing touches, and basically just, allow you to maximize recovery based on the food intake and how hard you're training. That's honestly all it should be. It's not meant to be the be all end all.
Exactly.
No.
And when you have a coach, you're 100% trusting in them that they're giving you good information. So, working with that previous coach for 2 years, I thought what he was telling me was good info, and come to find out, could have really, screwed myself up doing certain things, but wasn't doing some research myself. So, definitely glad to be with Justin and on a more structured approach to things.
Right. Well, I mean, again, like you said, there's a structure involved. It's not just, do a bunch of random shit at a bunch of random times with no rhyme or reason. So, I mean, obviously you're going to have a little more trust in somebody when they can actually give you a good answer, and you can see that there's a mapped out plan in place, and not necessarily just, do this because I feel you should. Or, this is how you should do this. Take a gram this week of this, and then mix it with a gram of this, and then in 10 weeks I'm going to tell you to do something completely fucking different. And honestly, that shit just doesn't work, and it doesn't fly, and I don't know how somebody can get away with doing that over time like that, but whatever.
It's kind of scary because I'm not the only one that was
Right.
part of that.
Right.
So it's happening to other people, and I hate, number one, to see it happen to women.
Yeah.
Right. Because honestly, they're the most. I don't want to say they don't know the most about gear, but when a female competitor has a coach and a coach just tells them to take something, they're not going to ask why. They're just going to do it.
Right.
And I see a lot of females really mess themselves up, not knowing what they're doing, and it's sad. But even like guys my age, some of the stuff I heard backstage at Team Nationals of kids doing, and I'm like, man, like it really blew my mind. Some of the stuff coaches just, tell these people to take, and they do it, not even second guessing.
Right. Yeah, and it's very irresponsible on the coach's part. I mean, you can sit there and say, yeah, the kid, you should know better. You should do some research. Anything you put in your body, and I'll tell them that you should always research anything you're going to put in your body. But at that age, with absolute being naive about the whole thing, I can see how it happens and how they can be taken advantage of in that situation. And a lot of times it just comes down to money. I mean, it comes down to, hey, you're paying this coach, I'm paying him to do this. He or she is charging me X amount of dollars per month or per week. They got to know what they're doing. So I'm just going to trust them.
The biggest thing is some of these coaches are selling their clients gear.
Well, yeah.
And then, of course, the coach is going to tell him to take more because he's benefiting off of selling his own stuff.
I actually see that a lot, specifically with the person you're talking to. And this individual you're talking to pretends to be a coach for the university bodybuilding team, gets girls who are students at the university to hire him for free, but then sells them injectable gear. And that's the profit margin.
Right.
And it's disgusting. And I talk shit about the guy multiple times on our show, but I'm not going to do it now with his name because you're intentionally not using his name. But people can go back and listen to old episodes and figure out who this person is.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a common trend of this person getting talked about, but I think people in the state are starting to realize.
Well, I just, for me, it's a safety thing for people. I mean, if you're I mean, it's great now. I mean, yeah, you may end up looking good, you may not, just because, for whatever reason, but what are you gonna end up looking like, and how's your lifestyle gonna be 10 years down the road from doing this for 2 and 3 and 4 years straight?
Exactly. Justin takes the same approach. She requires me to get blood work done too.
Right.
I send them all my work. I get EKGs. I get a echocardiogram done once a year along with my EKG and heart CT scan. So Justin's very wants me to stay on top of my health as well. And I think that's...
Are you in parents' insurance right now?
Yes, I am until I'm 26.
Okay. I couldn't afford that shit.
Because some of that shit's pretty expensive.
Yeah. Thank God my dad has a good job that covers insurance.
That's funny. But yeah, well, I mean, you have to do that though. I mean, if you can do it, do it. I mean, the blood work I think is probably the big one. Get your blood work done. If you can do it every 6 months, do it every 6 months. If you can only do it once a year, at least that's better than nothing, not doing it at all. I've always try to get it done in the off season at some point and get a physical if I can in there as well. Have the doctor actually look at me, check all vitals and everything, just get an actual physical done. And then, not during contest prep because everything's going to be skewed during that because, the way contest prep goes, but a month or two after prep when you've been eating normal again, your life's kind of going back, get the blood work done then. See how bad you fucked yourself up during prep.
Yeah, Justin will usually have me do blood work 8 weeks post-show.
Okay.
I'll do it again mid-off season.
Yep.
And usually one more time before I start prep. So 3 times a year. And then all the heart-related stuff is just done once a year.
Okay. Now, does he have you you said you utilizing insulin with some of those high-carb days. Does he have you using a glucometer on those days in the off-season too as well, or is that just something that he has you doing peak week?
Honestly, ever since the show in Junior Nationals, I check my blood sugar almost daily, just because I want to make sure my insulin sensitivity is good.
Okay.
What's your blood sugar in the morning right now?
Between 79 and 83.
Perfect.
Okay, that's okay. Because I found that when I was on gear, my was 84, and then I went off gear recently, and now it's like 91 to 100. So it's amazing how much gear helps you keep lower blood sugar.
Yes.
And one thing me and Justin did utilize that helped was berberine, something I didn't even know about. Over-the-counter, kind of an over-the-counter version of metformin.
Yep.
And I definitely noticed huge benefits from that. It also made me extremely hungry, so eating when my blood sugar was low helped me get more calories in too. I would prefer to use something like berberine over metformin. I find that metformin really messes up my stomach really bad.
Yeah, it does that with a lot of people, for sure.
But that's pretty much like the basic approach we would take for off season. Of course, contest prep, we add a few things and change them out every 4 or so weeks, but Justin has a reasoning behind all that.
Right. What you said it's a little bit different in contest prep and stuff. What is some of the stuff that he had you do in contest prep? Is it more gear? Is it less gear? Is it just more compounds with pretty much the same amount?
It's more compounds, not higher dosages, but just different compounds.
Right.
Stuff I've never really used before. For example, like last prep, I used Proviron for the first time, and Masteron, 2 compounds I've never used before.
Yep.
And I really found the last 6 weeks that I used those, it brought a certain dryness to my physique. Something I never noticed, but it's not really that it's more in total milligrams or amounts. It's more just different compounds at different times.
You're getting essentially the same amount overall on a weekly basis. You're just breaking it up into smaller doses with more compounds. So, which is the approach that I take, and most people that know what they're doing take.
But you're taking in a gram, 1.2 grams, but it's a different 1.2 grams.
Right.
Then
Right.
So what were your doses of Proviron and Masteron? Because I've never heard of both of them being used. I've heard of them being interchangeable. Basically, one's the injectable version of the other. But I'm interested in, because there's not like Justin makes mistakes. So what were the doses that you used for them?
So Justin actually had me use the long-acting version of Masteron at 400 milligrams a week. And then Proviron, we did 50 milligrams every day.
Okay.
50? Okay. Because I usually would do 50 milligrams of the short-acting Masteron a day, or 50 milligrams to 100 milligrams of Proviron a day, depending on how close I was to the show. And I found that with Proviron, I kept my hair better than Masteron. Keith, do you have an opinion about the differences between those two?
I've used both. I've never used them together either. I've either used Proviron by itself at about 50 milligrams a day, 25 in the morning, 25 at night. And then for Masteron, the usage has to be quite a bit higher. For me, it's usually about 150 milligrams every other day.
Okay. So 75 a day would be the average then.
Yes.
Did you notice the difference between the two since you saw them as interchangeable?
I think I'm a little drier and a little harder on the Masteron, but that could be because of the dosage. But I feel better on the Proviron. I think there's more of an anti-estrogen effect with the Proviron than there is with the Masteron. So by running them together, I think you probably can get something that's a lot better. Yeah. I think it would probably be the best of both worlds running them together, and like Dom, like you did running it. You ran the long acting version of it, which I've only heard of a few people actually using instead of using the propionate, using the enanthate version of Masteron, which actually is real Masteron is the enanthate version. The propionate version is called something else, but they just lump them together and call them both Masteron.
Right.
I've never heard of anybody doing that, so that might be something to check out. But I was planning on running them both this time together in a smaller dosages, just to get the best of both worlds.
My plan was to do basically 50 a day of Prop and Tren, 30 to 10 days out, with 50 Winstrol and 50 Proviron. And then the last 10 days go up to 100 Tren ASA, no Prop, and add in Masteron at 100 a day with the 50 Proviron and 100 Winstrol. So basically, pardon?
Justin did have me do was we didn't take out test and prep. We kept it all the way in. I know most people cut it out like 2 to 3 weeks out.
Right.
We kept it all the way up into the show, which is the first time I've ever done that.
You kept it all. You were running propionate though, correct?
Yeah, up until 5 days out.
Okay.
Okay, so 5 days out you took it out.
Right.
Yeah, I've usually left in up to 500 enanthate up to the show, and I never could get rid of the water.
Right.
And then Aaron Metzer had me drop my test 10 days out, and it helped enormously.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from Aaron about how to do the last couple weeks of prep. Even though he was on the show for peak week, we didn't talk about drugs, but that guy really helped me a lot with how to do the last couple of days worth of prep insofar as the pharmacology goes.
Right. Generally, I'll start running propionate. I'll switch over from Sustanon at about 6 weeks out, and then I'll run just Prop by itself for my test source at a lower dosage, and I'll increase everything else around it to keep the milligrams the same. And then I will drop the propionate. My last shot of propionate will usually be the Sunday before the show, so about 6 days out. And normally within 3 days, the water from testosterone is completely gone. I mean, it just comes out, and once you increase the water, you basically just flush. I mean, I think the last time I think I flushed 10 pounds out in about 2 days.
That's good to know. And because it also depends on what are you trying to accomplish. I mean, if you're trying to lose a ton of water weight, then everything must go. But if it's like I'm like a couple pounds over the cutoff,
right,
and you take a little bit of your water, and you're right at the perfect amount of fullness and hardness.
Right.
Don't fuck with it; it ain't broken.
Yeah, if you're already dry, if you're running test and enanthate and you're already dry, why change anything at that point? You may just not want to pin the last few days just so you don't have pin marks, but be just, there's no reason to drop it out. Now, if you're somebody like me that holds water like a fucking buffalo, I need to get that water out of me. I'll pull the Prop, I'll start switching over to Prop and fast acting stuff at around six to 8 weeks. and then I'll slowly take all the other stuff out, and we get down to the end where I pretty much, the last week, I think is for me is usually Winstrol, Halotestin, and Masteron. I even dropped the Tren because it makes me puffy.
But that's why you put in the Halo, is to replace the Tren.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll run. I only run the Halo because I can't stand Halo for longer than a week.
I can't even do a week. I'm too fucking mean. I have to wait until my phone's off to take it.
We had this combo with Carrie. Remember, Carrie told us that he took the cart from the woman and he pushed it across my hair because he got mad at her. Oh, that was great. Yeah, I Halo is a whole nother animal.
That is one thing I haven't experimented with, but that I will use this year for the last 3 weeks.
I'll tell you what, you'll harden up in about
It's a massacre.
you literally, I mean, you can literally watch yourself harden up with Halo, like by the couple hour increment. It's that quick in you, and you just literally just start dropping water out, and you just harden up and tighten up like tenfold. But the problem is, and the trade-off is, you're a raging lunatic asshole like never before, literally the entire time you're on it. But
you don't even respond to your girlfriend's text messages. She can't come to the show. Nothing. You can't have any contact with anyone that matters to you.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Like, literally, it's like a light switch ending a relationship. No matter how good you were, you will say just the right things to fuck someone's life up. Sorry.
Yeah,
you will never talk to that girl again, no matter who she is.
It is.
If you would talk to her while you're on Halo.
Oh, my wife looked at me. I was like 3 days out. She just looked at me. She goes, "I don't even know who the fuck you are right now." I'm like, just never mind. It's the Halo. And I walked away because I knew, but it's anything more than a week, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I think I'd probably go nuts. That is the one. That is the one right there. When they say, it changes your psyche. That's the one that I think actually can do. I don't think anything else. I mean, you think, I've used Tren in the off season and I'm fine. People say trends like that. I used Tren in the off season. I'm perfectly fine. I think a lot of that comes with just the low calories and being hungry all the time, being irritated and irritable, and your lack of fucking sleep because, you're on lower carbs and you're drinking 2 gallons of water and you're up peeing 15 times a night and you can't sleep at night because of it. And it's just this repetitive cycle. I think a lot of that irritation just comes from the diet and the training and the lack of sleep. But Halo is the one thing I think no matter when you take it, you're going to be a little bit off your fucking rocker.
Yeah, it's like 1,200 anabolic rating and a 600 androgenic rating.
Right.
Or something ridiculous like that. It's like astronomically stronger than you'd ever imagine. And that's where they only had a 50 milligram capsule. And I took it, and I had a panic attack.
Right.
I was backed up on it. And not only did I manage to piss off one of the calmest girlfriends I've ever had, to the point where she threw a dumbbell at me in public, but like I was actually shaking, having a panic attack.
Right.
And she was all yelling at me like, "Why the fuck did you take that much shit?" She never had a problem with me using any gear ever, but she lost her shit telling me off for using Halo just to go to the gym to do legs.
Yeah, it's like I don't think I've ever used more than 30.
Yeah, it was the capsule was only 50, so it's not like 10 4 times a day. I mean, motherfucker, I took 50 before the gym, so it was like fucking 500 Anadrol basically.
I was actually talking to a powerlifter 2 days ago about Halo testing, and he was telling me he used 70 milligrams the last 2 weeks before a show.
Holy shit! Did he kill anybody?
He said his deadlift went up 65 pounds.
I can believe it.
I was like, holy fuck, that's crazy.
Yeah, not only that, but he also probably has like 15 court cases against him.
He said it was terrible.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, I've heard of guys trying to use that the last 4 weeks, and I'm just like, how do you last 4 weeks? Do you completely isolate yourself from all existence for 4 weeks? Because, I mean, literally everything pisses you off. Everything, like even things you do yourself, you piss yourself off.
People smiling pisses you off.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to rip that smile off your face, fucker.
Right. Well, you got anything else you'd like to talk about there, Dom?
Well, going back to the whole master on a provider and
Sure.
thing we were talking about, I found that the two results I got from those two were pretty much the same as what I got from Tren, just
Okay.
without the side effects.
Right.
So honestly, I would prefer to use those two over something like Tren.
Right.
If I can get the same results without the side effects. But right now, like Justin for my off season had me use, testosterone and then theta is the base.
Yep.
And I've been using Primo Ball on, which
Okay.
I've never used before. And I think, I don't know if that's what's helped me stay lean or, I know it's not great for building mass or whatever, but I found that once I started taking that, my physique really started to look a lot differently. Like my weight was staying the same, but I was getting freakishly leaner and vascular at the same time. And I know it's quite like a mild compound, but I think that's another one in prep. If you have the wallet for it, I mean, it's expensive, but that's worthwhile using with Masteron and Proviron.
Yeah. Primo has always been not necessarily for myself. I've used it during contest prep, but for most people, it's contest prep. That was a favorite of Arnold was Primo.
Right.
And yeah, it's very, very mild, but when you stack it with testosterone, the anabolic effect, the stacking effect of it is pretty significant. And like you said, you feel harder, you look leaner, drier for the most is what really comes down to. You're just drier. You're not going to get any stronger. You're probably not going to get a lot bigger, but your physique is just your body composition is just going to change dramatically just from the fact that it's leaner.
My understanding of the way it works is that it's dihydroboldenone.
Right. It's
like
a form of EQ.
It's like EQ has 4 different endpoints. EQ is a pro-hormone to an anti-estrogen, an inner compound, estrogen, and Primo. So the reason why Primo is probably so, you have to make it from EQ, and it's like 25% of EQ naturally converts to Primo. All of the benefits of EQ is really from the fraction of it that turns into Primo.
Right.
So if you're on 800 EQ, you're really like on 200 Primo.
200 Primo, right.
And that's all you're taking. So you might as well save your money and just buy Primo. And since there's no negative effects, it's basically like one test. And so like methyl 1 test was all the rage when the pro-hormones were believed to be pro-hormones.
Right.
Like that one andro that proved was safe and that didn't get banned in 2014. The one andro pro-hormone, actually 1% of that converts to Primo. So if you're taking 300 one andro a day, you're going to get like 3 milligrams of Primo a day.
Right.
So Primo just binds to the androgen receptor and is twice as strong as testosterone, but it has no negative effects at all. It's purely anabolic. There's no way to get a side effect unless you're taking so much of it. You've overloaded all of your normal receptors, and it's turning into something effectively like DHT. Like if you're taking 3,000 milligrams of Primo, now you might have an overdose. But I think the reason why it's such a pain in the ass is it comes 100 milligrams per milliliter.
Yep.
And you need a minimum of 400 a week to get any effect, and most people have to do 800 to 1,000. Right. So you're talking about a bottle a week, and it's the hardest shit to find on the planet, and it's the most counterfeit.
That's exactly, because that's why it's the hardest to find, because it's counterfeited with a lot of times with testosterone propionate, which is
and the thing, it's like a Tren for cutting. It gives you all the benefits of Tren for giving you a benefit in a negative nitrogen balance, basically. Whereas normally, if you're in a calorie deficit, you might be in a negative nitrogen balance. Tren keeps you in a positive nitrogen balance. Primo does that too.
Right.
So does G8.
Right.
So those 3 things are the only things I know of that keep you in a positive nitrogen balance and help you build muscle even in a calorie deficit.
In a deficit, exactly.
So a lot of people, if you're using Masteron and Proviron and Primo, then you've covered your bases. You don't really need Tren at that point.
Right. Well, Primo and the way that it's constructed and stuff as well is probably why it's a favorite of a lot of female competitors, because it's not going to give them a lot of there's not all the conversion there, and they can safely take lower dosages of it and be okay, a lot like EQ. Because
it's even cleaner for girls than EQ.
Yeah, but I would say EQ is one that
they wouldn't get real Primo. So like,
but that's the problem, I think, for what kind of scares a lot of females away from using that one, is the fact that, okay, is this Primo or is this testosterone? Which one is it? Because you don't know. You literally have to, and it's counterfeited that way because anybody that's ever used test propionate knows that the injections can hurt. The injection site can hurt. It stings when it goes in. Primo really stings when it goes in. That's how you know you got real Primo. If it knots up for 3 days and you can't sit down, you've got Primo.
Interesting.
Yeah. But that's why they counterfeit it with testosterone propionate, because it's the closest thing to looking and feeling like that when you inject it. Nobody would really know, but that's unsafe for females. Obviously, if you get a real source of Primo, it's fucking expensive.
It is very expensive.
But it's very, very effective. Like you said, it's very, very effective in that especially when you stack it with something like testosterone as a base, you're going to get a lot of anabolic effect out of it, where and all the benefits that you get from EQ, like the collagen buildup and everything else, it makes your joints feel better. And you won't have to take as much as you would with, say, like EQ, because EQ is pretty mild, and that's because the low conversion to primobolan out of it, you're only getting so much, for a lot. Like you said, 800 milligrams is probably the equivalent of 2. So if you wanted to get the equivalent of 4, you probably would have to take 1,600 milligrams of EQ. Nobody's going to take 1,600 milligrams of EQ.
At that point, just buy fucking Primo.
Right. Exactly. It's probably the same price, to be honest with you. At that point, it's probably the same fucking price.
Right. Because you're going through an enormous amount. Because Boldenon's only 200 milligrams per milliliter.
Right.
And once I managed to make some EQ that was 300 milligrams per milliliter, and that shit was worth the effort. But unless it's like, I'm the only one I've ever met who's made 300 milligrams at once, so that shit was strong. But, it's like, because the only reason it's real EQ is because EQ is always a gel. It doesn't come as a wax. It doesn't come as a powder. It's the only liquid at room temperature anabolic steroid. So you don't counterfeit EQ. There's no point to it.
Right.
That you can identify that it was, when it was sent to you, that it was fake.
Right.
That you would have to intentionally fuck over your customers. It's not like you just get some powder and it's mislabeled and you pass on that type of deception. It's like EQ comes as a gel.
Right.
There's nothing you need to cut it with.
You're talking about the raw?
Yeah. There's nothing you have to cut it with to dissolve it into the grapeseed oil or the MCT oil. You just cut it with MCT oil and grapeseed oil or whatever to make it fluid enough to make it through the syringe.
Right.
But normally you have to use VA and BB to break up it, and that's why the certain stuff burns more than others.
Right.
Is in order to get the concentration strong and keep it from crystallizing out, you have to use those agents like test base. The reason why test suspensions in water is because it's like in test, when you try to make test base in oil, it crystallizes out and it causes adsorption and shit. And you end up losing most of the testosterone in these crystals in the container. So that's why they do it in a suspension, but because it's in water, it's more likely to have bacteria. That's why injecting Winstrol doesn't make sense, because you're going to give yourself 50,000 times the bacteria in a water preparation as would an oil preparation, no matter what the condition.
Right. Right. All right. Anything else, guys?
No, I appreciate Dom's candidness and communicating with us about everything he's doing.
Yeah, that's
lightning rise and meteoric.
I mean, I understand people not wanting to talk about it because, it's a gray area. But, we've talked about it. Me and Todd, you and I have talked about what we do. We don't really give two shits, but, it is what it is. But we've only had the only other person that's actually talked about gear on here was Justin, and we talked about growth hormone and IGF-1 that day when we had him on. But otherwise everybody else has kind of wanted to steer clear of the subject. So I appreciate you going into it, Dom, because I'm sure that's helpful for a lot of people, especially those that are with that coach.
Yeah.
You kind of hear from your account. Hey, you know what? Let's go one more thing here. Let's talk about diuretic use.
Speaking of that, coach.
let's go into diuretic use here. Give me an example of what old protocol would have been with that coach, and what Justin had you doing as far as water and diuretic use.
Well, previous coach had two protocols. We'll go back to 2015 Teen Nationals. My coach at the time wanted me to use aldactone. And I asked him, I was like, well, why don't you want me to use Lasix? And he's like, oh, that's too harsh. Don't ever take Lasix. It's bad for you. Well, the very following year, doing Teen Nationals again, he wanted me to take Lasix 4 days in a row before the show at a very high dosage. And I asked quite a few people in the industry about it, and they were extremely worried when I told them what I was told to take. I believe it was, are they 20 milligram tabs, Lasix?
Yep.
I believe I was supposed to take 80 for 4 days in a row, and then if needed to take 100.
Right, with no water. The part you're leaving out is the fact that you were drinking 64 ounces of water a day.
Well, he didn't want me to drink water the day before, and then only, 24 ounces 2 days out?
Right. In order for diuretics to be actually effective and work properly the way they're supposed to, you have to have the presence of water.
Exactly.
Because if you don't have the presence of water to flush out of your system, you're going to end up taking away intracellular water, which is going to make you flatter and not be able to load any kind of carbohydrates because there won't be any water to bind to. And then at that point, you also start destroying kidney function because there's no fluid, and you start cramping because there's no fluid in the muscle, so it can't. In order for your muscle to flex, it has to have sodium and water, and if you don't have one or the other, you're going to cramp. That's just the way that works.
Back to 2015, I did the aldactone.
Yep.
I ended up looking very soft. I mean, I was shredded for that show, but I was super soft. And since we pulled sodium 3 weeks out, which makes absolutely no sense at all. I mean,
I'm trying not to laugh.
It's retarded. I mean, to take your sodium completely out 3 weeks out and then had to take aldactone on top of it the last week.
It's like went down to Highland Park Powerhouse and just asked anyone who would pay attention to him what to do, and then told it to you, and forgets. And then goes and asks a different person and gets a random bullshit 1980s protocol and then gives it to you.
Right.
It's like from the dark ages of bodybuilding, it's like make sure to use Dream Tan and peanut butter. That's the most important part.
Dream Tan.
Yeah, I ended up looking soft and flat. So
sure.
Looked terrible. I mean, of course, it makes sense why I did. But a lot of people don't know the year I won Teen Nationals, I did the last 3 weeks of prep on my own. I stopped receiving communication through this coach at the time, and when he sent me my peak week protocol, it was the same thing as last year. Cut the sodium, cut the carbs, and instead of aldactone, let's take a ton of Lasix.
Right.
So I did the exact opposite. I kept the sodium extremely high, which I did the entire prep. I never cut out water. The night before I won Teen Nationals, I drank a half gallon of water before bed. And I only took 20 milligrams of Lasix that, my show was on a Wednesday, so I took it Tuesday night. I didn't do it 4 days prior leading up. Never cut out water. Kept the sodium high, and my carbs the exact same. So I really didn't make any adjustments at all other than just adding the Lasix in, and I showed up fine.
Right.
So let me back you up a little bit. So you did your own prep for junior nat. You didn't change your carbs. You didn't change your sodium. You cut your water in half the night before the show and added 20 milligrams Lasix. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you just cut your water in half and took half of the dose of a normal Lasix dose is 40 milligrams.
Yeah.
But everyone's kidneys respond differently. So you got basically a half of a normal dose of Lasix, and you could have taken probably a half a diazide or a whole diazide and gotten the same result.
Yep.
And you cut your water down from what? Were you at like a gallon and a half, and you cut down to a half a gallon or a gallon?
I was drinking, I believe it was a gallon, and then the day before, I just drank half a gallon.
Okay.
No reason why. My instinct told me to do it, and I did. And
Right.
That's actually exactly what me or Keith or Justin Compton would do.
Yeah.
I literally
that's the normal way of doing it for a sane man who's already in shape.
If you're in shape, keep it high, keep the sodium high, keep the water high all the way up until the show, and then basically, I mean, you can taper down over 2 days, or you can just cut it in half the day before. It really depends on how you look. I mean, if you're already dry as shit, drinking a lot of water, keep it high until the day before the show, and then just kind of cut it in half the day before. If you're looking still a little bit waterlogged coming in, where you've got a little film of water on you, then you can taper it down and then add something like diazide. I would never use Lasix. I'd never use aldactone, and we discussed this. We had Compton on a few weeks ago. Todd, remember that we talked about the aldactone, and I same thing. Justin had the same thing that you had, where it was soft. You're shredded, then you end up looking soft from using the aldactone, and the reason why is because you can, like Compton said, you can eat a bag full of fucking salt and it's not going to do you any good, because it blocks aldosterone, which means basically the sodium is not going to get into the muscle.
Yeah, and I watched, Matt Porter made a really good video about, I think a year or two ago, about aldactone, and I watched that right after the show where I took aldactone. I was like, why on earth did I take that? Why did I listen to this guy?
Right.
But, Justin's approach to peak week was pretty much kind of what I did to myself in T Nationals.
Right.
Kept the water extremely high up until, the day before the show. The sodium was super high. I just ate more food.
Right.
And in a panic mode, we did take one diazide, but that's just because of my blood sugar being so high and me pushing the water under my skin and not into the muscle. Well, that was kind of our last resort at that point. But
my experience with diazide is, as long as you have the presence of water still, and you have the presence of sodium, you're not going to have too many negative effects. You're still going to be able to fill up. You're still going to you're obviously going to dry out a little bit, but the fact that it's potassium sparing helps with the fact that you're going to be able to fill up, and you're not going to become too flat, unless you, again, don't have enough water or you use too much of it. And just using one regular diazide the night before the show is not too much. I mean,
and I think with Lasix being like a loop diuretic, it makes you so depleted. You don't really have enough time to fill back out from all of that. It depletes everything.
Yep.
So it's really hard to be able to stay full and take that at the same time.
Yeah, Lasix should not be used in a bodybuilding world at all, just because of how, number one, how dangerous it is. Number two, it's kind of counterproductive. I mean, Justin Compton said this a couple weeks ago. He said, if you're a 300, 400-pound obese woman, and you need to, basically get rid of all the extra water that you're carrying that's attached to your, bound to fat cells, then yeah, Lasix is probably a good choice for you. But for a bodybuilder who's already lean and is trying to preserve roundness and fullness in their muscles, it's not a good idea. It's just not.
I mean, let's just look at it as a math equation. You got 100 pounds of muscle, you got 10 pounds of fat. You want to drop 20% of your water. Okay, you've got 80 pounds of muscle, 8 pounds of fat. What the fuck did you just accomplish?
Right.
You lost 20 pounds of muscle to lose 1% of your body fat. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
You're not going to look harder, that's for sure.
No, you're not looking softer.
Yeah.
Yep.
the trick would be to lose 2 pounds of water, 1 from the fat, 1 from the muscle. So you're now 99 and 9. But nobody's that good at it.
Right.
So it's just, and in the end, it's almost never worth it. That's why most people don't use anything, or they use a quarter or a half a diazide. I don't think anyone even uses a whole diazide if they're down to 5% body fat.
Yeah, like if you're 5 or under, there's really no reason. You're already lean enough anyway to, just losing just that little teeny tiny film of water that you'll have under the skin is all you need to do. And even I mean, if you do it right with the water and manipulate the sodium in the water and the carbohydrates correctly and do it perfectly, you wouldn't even need anything at all. You end up just as dry. So.
And there's no chance of backfiring.
Right. The diazide just kind of gives you the, I guess, the confidence that you're going to be dry enough and you're not going to be holding any kind of fluid. It's kind of an in case shit happens type thing to have it on hand, just because it is pretty quick acting too. I mean, you take a half a diazide and within 3 to 4 hours you're noticing change as far as body fluid levels. So.
This reminds me of, I don't know if you guys remember when Paul Dillette locked up on stage.
That was from Lasix.
Yeah, I think it was
kidneys
the
lost function.
And he had to be carried off stage.
Yeah. He lost kidney function and ended up cramping up completely. That happened to Flex
Wheeler,
Wheeler, I think, a couple of times too, where he cramped up so bad from being dried out, severely dehydrated on stage that he basically locked up on stage and had to be, helped off stage.
And he's the guy who's the poster child for kidney failure now.
Right. Both of them. So
yeah, so
go figure.
I guess the moral of the story is you're not building your body with diuretic.
No.
You're
destroying it. So. All right, guys. Well, Dom, thanks for coming on tonight. Look forward to, we'll have you on again once you get into prep. We'll bring you back on. You can talk about your prep for the Junior Nationals and the USAs, or maybe we'll have you on one of those episodes in between the Junior Nationals and the USAs when me and you were both severely depleted and half dead. That'll make for a good show. But the Weekly Grind Podcast brought to you by Valhalla Labs at valhalla-labs.com. And we'd like to thank Dominic Triveline for coming on today and wish him good luck in his preparation for the Junior Nationals and the USAs. So for Doctortoddlee, for Dominic Triveline, I'm Keith Fabbri saying thank you for listening to the podcast and keep grinding.